James Gunn has a plan to win over Zack Snyder's fans, and it starts with something most people didn't expect: actually reaching out to Snyder for input. When it came to designing Superman's new costume, Gunn went straight to the source and talked to Snyder about the infamous red trunks. Snyder admitted he'd tried to make them work, but couldn't quite get there. That conversation didn't just shape the look of Superman, it set the tone for how Gunn is handling the entire DC reboot, by showing respect for what came before, while aiming for something new.
All right, well, I'm gonna try, we'll do one version where we try both trunks and not trunks. I went in with David, he tried in not trunks, and he tried in trunks. And I still was gonna go with not trunks, and then you said,
well, you wanted trunks in theory. You
in
liked the
theory,
idea of trunks.
theoretically, I like the idea of trunks.
But a faction of passionate Zack Snyder supporters is actively trying to derail James Gunn's upcoming Superman reboot before it even hits theaters. These Snyderverse loyalists have launched an online campaign aimed at tanking the film's success, coordinating efforts to bomb the movie, leak spoilers across social media, and even reserve tickets without paying to create the illusion of poor turnout. Their motive? To protest the end of Snyder's vision for the DC universe and express frustration over Warner Brothers handing the reins to Gunn. But James Gunn isn't backing down. When asked about the controversy, he responded with humor and confidence, "I think we'll survive," suggesting the group's efforts are too small to make a real dent. He also reminded fans that he's not out to erase Snyder's legacy, but why does this even matter? To understand why Gunn's approach is such a big deal, you need to know just how loyal and passionate Snyder's fans are, and what makes them so resistant to change. For a lot of people, Zack Snyder's DC movies hit different. His version of Superman wasn't the smiling, all-powerful icon from the old comics. In Man of Steel, we got a hero who felt like an outsider, someone struggling with what it means to be good when the world doesn't always want you. Snyder's Superman was almost mythic, wrestling with questions about identity, responsibility, and whether anyone can really live up to being a symbol. That approach set the tone for the rest of Snyder's universe. In Batman v Superman, the heroes weren't just fighting villains, they were facing off as gods and men, with every decision carrying a lot of weight. The movies leaned into the idea that these characters were more than just superheroes. They were figures you could analyze, debate, and even argue about. For fans, that made the stories feel more grounded and complicated. This is a big reason why Snyder's fans are so loyal. They saw something in his work that went beyond surface-level action. Many in the Snyder camp feel the character's weight of doubt deepened his appeal. Superman wasn't just saving the day, he was questioning if he should even be the one to do it. The darker, more conflicted tone felt like a response to a world that isn't always hopeful. For some, that was the first time a superhero movie really reflected how complicated life can get. That connection only grew stronger after the original cut of Justice League hit theaters. Fans saw a version that didn't match what Snyder had set up. That's when the hashtag #RestoreTheSnyderverse campaign took off. People weren't just asking for another movie, they were fighting for a vision they felt invested in. Snyder's relationship with his audience was direct and personal, and that helped fuel the movement. When Warner Brothers finally released Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max, it broke streaming records. That wasn't just a win for Snyder, it was proof of how much his fans cared and how far they were willing to go to support his take on these characters. But all this loyalty also brings a lot of skepticism. When James Gunn says he wants to bring back a hopeful Superman,
done justice elsewhere in Superman.
I don't think we've ever seen the big science fiction Silver Age Superman aspects that we have in our movie, and we've never seen we've never seen this. You'll see when the movie comes out. We've never seen this specific part of Superman's life.
a lot of Snyder's fans worry that means losing the depth they valued. For them, the classic smiling Superman in his bright red trunks can feel like a step backward. Snyder's Superman was complicated, and his struggles made him relatable. So when Gunn talks about reviving the old school heroism, some fans hear that is code for ignoring the layers Snyder built up. Even something as simple as bringing back the red trunks becomes a symbol for the bigger debate. Should Superman be an untouchable icon, or a flawed figure trying to do the right thing in a world that doesn't always reward it? The divide isn't just about costumes or color palettes. It's about what these characters are supposed to represent. Snyder's Superman was a man carrying the weight of the world, trying to find his place. Gunn's version, from what we know, is aiming for someone who inspires hope just by being good. That's a big shift. To some, it's a welcome change. To others, it feels like erasing the complexity that made the character interesting in the first place. What makes it even trickier is that Snyder fans feel like his story isn't finished. The release of the Snyder Cut gave them a sense of validation and a reason to believe that his vision still matters. Now, with Gunn taking over and rebooting the whole universe, there's a real fear that everything they fought for will be left behind. Years of investment, both emotional and practical, are suddenly at risk, and it's not easy to let that go. So Gunn isn't just stepping into a new creative role, he's walking into a fan base that feels burned and protective of what they see as the real DC. Winning them over is going to take more than just a new costume or a few callbacks to the past. It's about convincing people that Superman can still matter, even if he's not the same conflicted hero they grew attached to. And that brings up a different question. What if the most unexpected thing about Superman now is something as simple as being good? James Gunn's approach to Superman is about pushing back against the idea that goodness is outdated. He's not interested in another story about a hero who doubts himself at every turn. Instead, Gunn wants to show what happens when Superman's main struggle is holding on to hope in a world that doesn't see much value in it. Gunn put it simply in an interview. He wants to make a film about someone who was truly good in a world that doesn't value goodness. This isn't just a slogan, it's the core of his vision for the character. This sets up a clear contrast with the tone of recent superhero movies, especially the ones directed by Zack Snyder. Snyder's Superman was defined by self-doubt and heavy moral questions. Gunn's take is different. Rather than dramatic doubt, Gunn's Superman carries hope as his primary challenge. He's not ignoring the existence of darkness, but he's not letting it define the character. Gunn thinks that in a cynical world, sticking to optimism and kindness is actually the bold move. A lot of fans are used to superhero movies that treat optimism as naive or even boring. Gunn knows the risk. He's aware that some people think Superman's straightforward goodness can make him less interesting. But Gunn's argument is that in a genre full of anti-heroes and flawed protagonists, a hero who refuses to give up on doing the right thing stands out. He's not trying to make Superman cool by making him edgy. He's making him stand out by doubling down on the qualities that have always been there. You can see this shift in the details Gunn is bringing back to Superman's world. Krypto the Superdog is set to appear. Another layer to this. Gunn's past work, especially on Guardians of the Galaxy, was sometimes criticized for undercutting emotion with raunchy humor. This time, Gunn says the tone will be different. Of course, Gunn isn't pretending that Superman's life is easy. He knows that fans are watching closely to see if he'll respect what came before or just start over. That's why his next move surprised a lot of people, especially those who thought he'd want to distance himself from Snyder's influence. Instead of ignoring what came before, Gunn took a direct approach and reached out to Zack Snyder for advice on one of Superman's most debated features, the red trunks. This wasn't just a courtesy call. Gunn was deep into the design process for Superman Legacy and wanted to know if there was a way to bring back the trunks without making the suit feel dated or out of place. Snyder had already been through this exact struggle during Man of Steel. In a Fandango interview, Snyder explained, "I tried a billion different versions with the trunks, and at the end of the day, I tried it, but I just couldn't get there." Gunn found himself in the same position. He liked the idea of honoring tradition, but actually making it work was a lot harder than it looked. The red trunks have always been a lightning rod for debate. For some, they're a symbol of Superman's classic image. For others, they represent a style that feels stuck in the past. Snyder's decision to drop them lined up with his darker, more mythic vision for the character. He wanted a Superman who felt modern and grounded, and the trunks didn't fit that look. But Gunn saw an opportunity to use the trunks as a bridge between old and new. He wasn't just thinking about what would look good on screen. He wanted to find a way to bring in classic elements without losing the character's relevance. What makes this story even more interesting is that Gunn didn't just consult Snyder. He listened to the people he was working with right now. David Corenswet, who's playing Superman in Gunn's film, actually convinced Gunn that the trunks made Superman look more approachable and friendly. This wasn't just a top-down decision. It was the result of conversations between directors and actors, with everyone weighing in on what would make Superman work for today's audience. That kind of collaboration is rare, especially in big franchise reboots. The debate over the trunks might sound small, but it says a lot about how Gunn is handling the legacy he's inherited. He's not drawing a hard line between his vision and Snyder's. Instead, he's treating Superman as a character who can evolve, taking pieces from different eras and making them fit together. By openly crediting Snyder's input, Gunn is signaling that he sees value in what came before. He's not erasing the past, he's building on it. Instead of just focusing on Superman, James Gunn is laying out a plan for the entire DC universe. His strategy is about more than just a new look or a new actor in the cape. Gunn wants to build a connected world that stretches across movies, TV, and even video games. The first phase of this reboot is called Gods and Monsters, and it's designed to be a big, shared story where every project fits together. This is a major shift from how Zack Snyder handled things. Snyder's films were mostly about standalone stories where each hero had their own space. Gunn's idea is to make everything feel like it's part of one big universe, with stories and characters bouncing between platforms. One of the most noticeable changes is in the casting. David Corenswet is the new Superman, and Rachel Brosnahan is taking over as Lois Lane. Neither is a huge star, and that's on purpose. By choosing actors without major baggage or strong associations with past roles, Gunn clears the slate. The audience isn't coming in with a bunch of expectations or memories of other versions. This helps set a new tone for the DCU and lets these characters stand on their own, separate from the shadow of Henry Cavill or Amy Adams. It's a move that signals Gunn's commitment to a fresh start, one where the performances matter more than the actor's past work. Gunn's approach is all about cohesion. He's taking on a role similar to what Kevin Feige does at Marvel, making sure the films, shows, and games all connect in a way that feels natural. Fans who get invested in one story should feel like they're part of something bigger. This is new for DC, where projects have often felt disconnected or like afterthoughts. Gunn wants to avoid that. By building everything under one umbrella, he hopes to create a world where every piece matters and where fans can jump between media without feeling lost. But none of this works if the first movie flops. The stakes for Superman legacy are high. Industry projections put the opening weekend somewhere between $140 million and $185 million in the US. That's a strong start if it happens, but it's also a sign of how much is riding on this film. If it hits those numbers, it gives Gunn the momentum he needs to roll out the rest of his plan. If it falls short, the entire reboot could be in trouble before it even gets going. The box office isn't just about money, it's about proving to fans, investors, and even the cast and crew that this new direction is worth following. Gunn has shown before that he can take characters nobody cared about and make them matter. Others worry that the new tone will lose the depth and seriousness they liked. Gunn's job is to prove a new standard for what the DCU can be. Gunn's strategy isn't about erasing what came before. It's about building on it, using the best parts of the past to create something that feels new. As the DCU moves forward, the question is whether this approach can finally bring all the different parts of the fandom together and give everyone a reason to care about these stories again.